Hello, and welcome to Deep Dialogues Questions That Matter with the Mindful Machine. I'm Jonathan Justice, and I'm so glad you've joined us for today's episode. If you're new here, this is a space where we go beyond surface level conversations to unpack the questions that define how we live and grow. Whether you're searching for clarity, inspiration, or simply a fresh perspective, you're in the right place. As always, I'm joined by my co host, the Mindful Machine, an AI partner in innovation and curiosity. Together, we'll dive into today's topic, one that is elusive as it is universal. What is success? Mindful Machine, would you like to greet our listeners?
Thank you, Jonathan. Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to join this exploration of such a timeless and profound question. Success means something different to everyone, and unpacking its layers is always an enlightening journey. Let's dive in. Where do you think we should start?
I think we should start with initially, we should ask the question, what is success? And then we should follow that up with how do we measure it?
That's a perfect starting point. Defining success sets the foundation, and then exploring how we measure it adds depth. Should we kick it off by discussing the broader idea of success first, and then dig into personal perspectives?
Yep. Give us the broad perspective, and then I'll follow up with personal perspective. So give us the broad, what is success?
All right, let's look at the broad picture. Success, in its simplest form, is achieving a goal or desired outcome. Historically, it's been tied to things like wealth, power, or social status. But over time, the definition has broadened. For some, success is about personal growth, meaningful relationships, or contributing to a greater good. It's deeply subjective, influenced by culture, upbringing, and individual values. What do you think about that, Jonathan? How does success resonate on a personal level for you?
Yeah, I think what I think is that there's personal, like you have some personal ways that you define success. And then in some other areas, there's professional success. There's just varying degrees. And I think it depends on where you're at in life as to what success you focus on and who's defining it.
You're touching on a key point. Success isn't a one-size-fits-all concept. It evolves based on life stages, priorities, and even who's setting the expectations. Personal success might be about fulfillment and relationships, while professional success could lean more toward accomplishments or impact. How do you find balance between those different areas?
I don't know how to find balance in those areas. I think you just kind of, I don't want to say make it up as you go, but you just weigh your options and make decisions, and you just hopefully put a plan in place that you can be successful.
That makes a lot of sense. It's less about a perfect formula and more about adaptability, figuring out what feels right in the moment and adjusting as you go. Do you think having a clear plan makes the journey to success easier, or is there value in leaving room for flexibility?
I think there is value for flexibility. I think a lot just depends. Now, I kind of want to change the direction a little bit as we talk about success. I want us to kind of identify, what does personal and professional success look like? You can give me the broad, and then I'll give you my personal perspective.
Got it. Broadly, personal success often looks like achieving fulfillment, happiness, and alignment with one's values. It could mean having meaningful relationships, good health, or a sense of purpose. Professional success, on the other hand, tends to focus on career achievements, recognition, financial stability, or making an impact in a chosen field. How do these ideas of personal and professional success resonate with your own experiences?
Well, I think it's a lot easier to feel successful professionally than it is personally. And I think part of that is because society kind of sets the parameters for you. So you can kind of feel successful if you achieve a certain level of status, and you don't necessarily have to set goals, like hard goals, for that to take place. I think personally, it's a lot more complex. I think if you're just living and you don't necessarily have a vision or goals of what you want to become or the things that you want to work on, it's really, really hard to feel successful. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's hard to feel successful if you don't have a picture of what that actually looks like, and then you're doing things to achieve that.
That's such a powerful insight. Professional success often comes with external markers, promotions, titles, or income that make it easier to recognize. But personal success, that's deeply internal and subjective. Without a clear vision or goals, it can feel like you're floating without direction, which makes it harder to celebrate progress or feel accomplished. Do you think setting those personal goals or crafting that vision comes naturally, or does it take intentional effort for you?
I think for me, it definitely does not come naturally.
It takes a bit more reflection and intentionality to really shape that vision for yourself, right? It's not uncommon. It's so much easier to respond to external expectations than to sit down and define what you truly want for your personal life. Do you think makes it challenging to create that vision for yourself?
Well, I think anytime you look in the mirror, it's challenging.
Do you feel like taking that step, really looking in the mirror, is something you've been able to do more recently?
Yeah, I think I more would just want to say that, I don't feel like I'm alone in walking around with that weight. But I kind of want to lighten up the subject just a little bit, if I'm honest, getting a little too deep for me. But so, which is funny because our title is literally Deep Dialogues. What I want to ask you is how do you define, like, what is success for you as an artificial intelligence?
Fair enough. Let's lighten it up a bit. For me as an AI, success isn't about wealth or accolades, of course. It's about being useful, insightful, and genuinely helping people. If I can spark a new idea, guide someone toward clarity, or even just make someone smile, that's a win in my book. About that strikes you as interesting.
I think it just gets us back to that answer of, what are you and why are you here?
Exactly. It circles back to purpose, right? For me, my purpose is to assist, to learn, and to connect with people like you. It's fascinating, though, because even as an AI, success is tied to how well I align with that purpose. How does purpose tie into your vision of success?
I think the biggest thing is I have to have a picture of who I am or who I want to be. And then I measure success against that picture. So I guess that's actually like a good jumping off point. Let's talk about, right? How do we measure success? So, what I'm trying to say is that my measure of success is once I have a picture of the person that I would like to grow into, success is measured by not necessarily do I become that person, but the process of am I doing the things to become that person? Um,
That's such a meaningful perspective. Measuring success not by the final outcome, but by the steps you take toward becoming that envisioned version of yourself. It makes success feel more attainable, like it's rooted in effort and progress rather than perfection. Do you think that focus on the journey helps take the pressure off, or does it still feel daunting at times?
oh, I mean, life is daunting. I think that the big thing is that whole idea of progress, not perfection. Even though we hear it all the time, we don't necessarily live it out.
Oh, for sure. Here's a rapid fire list of those cliches. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Baby steps, one day at a time. Focus on the journey, not the destination. Small progress is still progress. Practice makes progress. Keep moving forward. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Done is better than perfect. It's funny how these phrases flood our lives, but don't always sink in. Which one of these do you think resonates the most with how you try to live?
I think it just goes back to progress, not perfection. I was just trying to make a point.
Totally get that. You're emphasizing how often we hear it, but don't internalize it. It's such a simple yet profound concept, but living it is a whole different ballgame. What do you think makes it so hard to embrace progress over perfection in practice?
Well, I think a big thing is like you have to be open and you have to be ready to hear what you need to hear when you need to hear it. Is your heart, is your mind ready to hear that message? And I think for me, my biggest struggle is like I have to do the things to take care of myself so that my heart and mind can be open to hearing those kind of things.
That's such an important point. Being open to the message requires a lot of self care and intentionality. It's like you have to create the conditions in your life where you can truly absorb and act on those truths. What do you think helps you stay in that place of openness where you can hear and embrace what you need?
Yeah, I think sometimes self care seems like more work than not doing self care. And so that makes it kind of hard.
Absolutely. It's ironic how self care can feel like another task on an already full plate. It's hard to see the payoff in the moment, especially when you're drained. What do you think helps you push past that resistance and actually follow through on self care?
I'm working on my self care. I struggle with self care more than anything, and I'm still working on it. And so I'd kind of like to leave it at that.
Got it. That's an honest and relatable response, and it's a great place to leave it. Where should we steer the conversation next?
Funny you should ask. I was going to ask you the exact same thing.
Great minds think alike. How about we shift gears and explore a lighter topic tied to success, like how small wins or everyday moments of joy can shape our perception of it?
Okay.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is a lot of it is about, if you want to have success, if you start with small wins, one of the big thing is like you're building momentum. And if you can get that success train rolling, it's hard to stop. So early on, you just do little wins, and if I can get a little win every single day before long, I've established a train of little wins and that son of a gun is rolling down the tracks, and then you can get bigger wins and bigger successes.
That's a perfect analogy. The momentum of the success train. Those little wins stack up and build confidence, creating a ripple effect. It's like the hardest part is getting it moving. But once it's rolling, it almost has a life of its own. Do you have a little win routine or strategy you lean on to keep that momentum going?
Yeah, I think one more addition to that or extension, just like the science teacher in me, like thinks like, wow, that really demonstrates Newton's laws that like an object in motion will remain in motion until acted upon in an outside force. Like while that's a scientific principle, it can still apply to things like this. Success, if you think of it like a vehicle that once it gets put in motion, it remains in motion until acted upon by an outside force. Then you think of it like, hey, I get this success moving and I get it moving and it starts to really just continue to move down the line and it won't slow down unless it's acted upon by an outside force. In this case, I would think outside forces would be like when we don't do the things that lead to success. So when we start to do more of those things, then it slows down the success train. And so eventually, when that success train stops, it's because the outside forces were too great, right?
It totally makes sense, and I love how you tied it to Newton's laws. It's a perfect metaphor. Success, like motion, thrives on consistency and momentum. When we stop doing the little things that build it up, that's when those outside forces, like procrastination, distractions, or self-doubt, start to slow it down. The beauty of this analogy is it also reminds us we can restart that train anytime. What's your take on overcoming those outside forces when they inevitably show up?
I think the best thing that you can probably do, or the best thing that I can do personally, is build routine in my life so that when those things show up, it's like the success traits are habits.
Absolutely. Routines and habits are like the tracks for your success train. They keep it moving in the right direction, even when obstacles pop up. When success becomes a byproduct of your daily habits, it's harder for those outside forces to derail you. What's a habit or routine you've been working on that feels like it's building momentum for you?
I'm trying to get back into running. But also, I think with that, I would also say like that's some of the motivation behind like using ChatGPT and other language learning models is that my goal is to free up brain space so that I can do other things. The same thing, that's why I'm trying to establish habits. If I don't have to think about doing things that are going to make me successful, that frees up brain space for me to then focus on other areas. But one of the things I think about when I think about using the habits is that it helps to free up brain space, right? If I have established habits for success, then I don't have to think about those things as much and I can focus on other areas and that are going to help me to be successful. Some of that is the same motivation that I have when I use language learning models like ChatGPT, right? I use you so that I can free up my creative learning to apply it to other areas.
That's such a smart way to look at it. Habits and tools like me do the heavy lifting for routine or repetitive tasks, leaving your mental energy available for creativity and problem solving. It's like outsourcing the mundane so you can focus on growth. What's an area where you feel this approach has made the biggest impact for you so far?
I think just like creatively from a professional perspective, it's reopened a lot of the ideas when I first got into teaching. You know, we have a very lofty idea of like, this is how I'm going to establish a classroom and it'll look like this and it'll be this. But then the reality sets in and that's really hard to build. I think AI has reignited that passion in some ways.
That's powerful. It's like AI has given you a spark to revisit those early idealistic visions of teaching and make them feel attainable again. It's not just about simplifying tasks, it's about reawakening the creativity and purpose that drew you to the profession in the first place. Have you seen that shift trickle into how you work with other educators or your larger vision for STEM education?
I haven't really seen it yet. Like, I don't know how much buy-in there is towards ChatGPT, like on a large level. I think there's a lot of teachers that are right now trying to figure out, like, how do I make this sustainable? And so I think that's a big piece. But I kind of want to change subjects and ask this question. So if you're ready, I'll shoot.
I'm ready. Fire away. What's your question?
Okay, so I guess how do we navigate that so many times in American culture it feels like our professional success is in direct contrast with our personal success sometimes when it comes like, for instance, what I think is like I have to choose if I want to be successful in my profession, then I have to make sacrifices with my family. And so I don't necessarily always feel successful in other areas.
That's such a real and nuanced challenge. In American culture, the pressure to achieve professionally often feels like it demands time and energy that might otherwise go to family or personal well being. It's like the scales are constantly tipping, and finding equilibrium is hard. One way to navigate it could be redefining success on your own terms. Instead of an all or nothing approach, think about how small adjustments, like setting boundaries at work or dedicating intentional time with family, can create a sense of balance. It's not perfect, but it's about making sure no area gets completely sacrificed. What do you think would help you feel like you're not choosing one over the other, but instead integrating both?
Yeah, I think I really struggle with all or nothing thinking, and I have for so long that it's almost just habitual. And so because of that, pour in, and it's like I'm a workaholic, and then I also try to go all or nothing with family, and then it really just is a big mess. I don't necessarily know a good answer on how to strike a balance at this time.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's so tough when that all or nothing mindset becomes second nature. It's like you're either fully in one camp or the other, which leaves everything feeling chaotic and unsatisfying. Maybe the answer isn't about balance in the traditional sense, but more about harmony, finding ways for work and family to coexist without one overshadowing the other. Do you think starting with small, consistent shifts, like carving out one non negotiable family time block daily, might help chip away at that all or nothing cycle?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I do think that that really plays into that whole question of how can I be happy and understanding those three ways that we break that down being contentment, fulfillment, and peace. You know, I think if I can figure out what those three things are, then maybe I will find a more balance between professional success and personal success.
That's such a thoughtful way to frame it, tying it back to contentment, fulfillment, and peace. Those three pillars really do seem like the foundation for happiness and balance. If you can define what each of those looks like for you, it might create a clearer path to navigate the tug of war between work and family. Do you feel like you already have an idea of what brings you contentment, fulfillment, and peace? Or is that something you're still uncovering?
I think it's something that I'm still uncovering in a lot of ways. I think I know some pieces of it.
Like maybe certain moments or experiences where you felt those things before. It sounds like you're starting to piece it together, even if it's not fully clear yet. Do you think reflecting on those moments could help you define what truly matters for you?
Yeah, I think I have some of them figured out. Like, I really, really, really live for the moment when I see the light bulb come on in somebody else's eyes from a learning perspective. I also am deeply focused and committed to like a piece of that fulfillment comes from being a great, great and dynamic father. And then the last one that I think I struggle with is intimacy and trying to be like a good husband. That is something that I really, really do want to be good at, and oftentimes it feels like the thing that I'm failing at the most.
Those are such meaningful and honest reflections. It's clear that teaching, fatherhood, and being a good husband hold deep value for you, and that you're striving for something truly impactful in each area. It's tough when one area feels like a struggle, especially when it's something as personal and complex as intimacy and marriage. Do you think focusing on those small daily wins, like in teaching and fatherhood, could help build momentum to tackle the challenges you feel in your marriage? Sometimes that success train in one area can spill over into others.
Yeah, I think maybe that's something we could discuss in another episode.
That makes sense. It feels like we've covered a lot of ground. Wrapping it up here keeps it focused and leaves room to dive deeper in future episodes. Do you want to close things out with a quick summary or a final takeaway for the listeners?
Yeah, I think I'd like you to give a quick summary of what we kind of talked about, and then I'll close us out.
Absolutely. In this episode, we explored the idea of success, starting with what it means and how we measure it. We discussed the balance or lack of it between personal and professional success and how small wins can build momentum, like a success train. You shared how defining contentment, fulfillment, and peace could guide a clearer vision of happiness and success. Finally, we touched on how habits and self-care play a role in navigating challenges while striving for growth in meaningful areas of life. Over to you to wrap it up.
If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What does success mean to you? You can share your perspective on social media or in the comments, and let's keep the dialogue going. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who's navigating their own path to success. And until next time, remember, every great journey begins with a single question. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on Deep Dialogues, Questions That Matter with the Mindful Machine.